Welcome to the Circuit of Success. I'm host Brett Gilliland, and today I've got Jeff Eschliman with me. Jeff, how you doing?
Outstanding, sir.
Awesome. Well, it's good to be with you today. Where are you calling in from again? I forgot to ask you that. Phoenix. I just got off the phone with a client in Vegas. At the desert's covered today, don't I?
Warm.
I bet it is warm, man. It's crazy there. I know, but they always say it's dry heat, right? Dry heat.
It is definitely that. So is an oven.
Exactly. Well, you are a guest that I'm excited to have on here today. You got 30 years of experience from combat in Iraq all the way to corporate boardroom. You're a sought-after expert for building and scaling results-driven teams, and your leadership style characterized by personal development, consistency, and tenacious work ethic, which I love. So I'm excited to talk about that. But if we can, let's start with what I always start with is, what's made you the man you are today? You don't just go to Iraq and the boardroom and all the things mentioned without a backstory, and so I'd love to hear that.
Right. It really starts, from I was pretty fortunate to have a great upbringing, folks that had instilled really good core values in me. But I was a little bit of a wallflower before going into the service. And when I went into the service, it was really, really life-changing for me. It took, all those fundamentals that I'd learned from my folks, and it really shaped who I was going to be, and then ended up being extremely pivotal through my entire leadership development and career. It was really back to my father was a house painter here locally. And so I grew up on residential home job sites here in the Valley. And that's really where I think those core values came into play with the leadership skills that I learned in the military.
Yeah. Did you know you wanted to go in the military at an early age, or what made you join the military?
I just refer to it as a calling. So I felt something in my heart that said I wanted to serve, and I didn't want to do the typical 4-year stint. And so anything that you were going to sign up for, at least in the Army in the era when I joined, had to be combat related. And my dad was a U.S. Marine, Vietnam era, even though he didn't go to Vietnam. And he always told me, either go in the Air Force or go in the Navy, because they'll teach you something. And so, of course, I joined the Army. And not that I joined the Army, I joined the infantry because it was the 2-year stint. And I figured, I would get what I was expecting out of it. Well, obviously, I ended up getting way more than, what I had bargained for. But those experiences, Brett, that was like the forge, right, of shaping what my personality and characteristics would be.
Yeah. I'm always fascinated. I love the military. In fact, I can look right now from my view here, see Scott Air Force Base. I can't see it because of the trees, but right where it's at. So we have one of the biggest, best Air Forces in the country right here up the road from my office. But what I'm sitting there with, and I've talked to military people, because the problem growing up, my kids growing up in a military base town as well, that you get really good friends and then they leave you, right? They leave you about every third or fourth year, and it's tough. And so I always joke when I'm a military guy or gal, I'm like, I don't want to be that good friends with you because you're just going to leave me again in 3 or 4 years. And so we joke around about that. But my point to this is, I love the goal of the military from what I've learned. I draw the wisdom that they share with me from a business standpoint is, in the military, there's clarity. We know the mission. We know why we're going there. So there's clarity. There's a plan, right? We show up, game plan on what we're going to do. We practice the game plan. Oh, by the way, we practice the game plan again, and then we execute. And I think if you take that from, to your point here, from Iraq to combat to the boardroom, those are always the things I like to draw parallels to, is that they're so clear on where they're going, right? They know the plan. And what if I do that from a business standpoint? No matter what I did for a living, if I had clarity, there was a plan, I practiced, and I executed it, how would life look for me as a business owner?
Absolutely. And I think the piece that I would add to that that was really pivotal for me was the teamwork piece, right? And so the military gave me two different things. One, it gave me an inner confidence that there was nothing that I couldn't decide that I could accomplish personally and then do it, and especially the physical part of the equation. But it was also mental, right? Because a big part of any physical journey is the mental piece, right? If you've ever ran a
Yeah.
marathon, anything like that, about mile 19, it is no longer physical. It is physical, but it's mental as well as physical, right? And the other piece would be the teamwork and seeing teams work together in that fashion and at that level. That is another thing that I was able to take into my corporate life that really made me successful in the very beginning stages, even being a superintendent out on the job site where I was literally running work before I became an executive. And I was getting all these folks that showed up on the job site to play at a higher level because I'd really seen the ultimate level.
Yeah. So when you talked about mental clarity and all that too, and what came to my mind when you're talking about that is fear and the men is, I can't imagine being on that airplane, flying, knowing I'm going to war, right? Because in the marathons, and I know in a marathon I'm going to run. I've never ran a marathon, but if I did, I could run. I put my preparation in. But at the end of the day, that's not my mentality. But the day I could stop if things went south, right? But in military, I'm getting dropped off to a war. I can't just be like, oh, sorry guys, not feeling it today. I'm out, right? I'm going where there are bombs blowing, there are guns being fired. Walk us through that mental side for you on that plane ride, knowing where the hell you're going.
Yeah, and I'll take it even one further than the plane flying over. It was I drove an armored personnel carrier, so I crossed across the border from Saudi Arabia into Iraq, and that was literally the most terrifying experience I've ever had in my life. And my biggest fear heading into that, Brett, was that I was going to fail, right? And I was worried that I was going to fail my team. So there was me and three other people on this armored personnel carrier, or the broader team being the United States Army, or the broader team being my country that had sent me over there on a mission. And so what I tell people about the experience, or just this experience in general, is I had to be bigger than I was capable of being individually, right? And that's where you get that lift up when you're a part of a team or you're a part of a mission that is well articulated and important. And I'll tell you how that translates into my life after I got out of the service. And we can go there if you want, but I've had a period in my life where I wasn't making very good choices and I had to fix a lot of things. One of the things is, at one point in my life, I was more than 100 pounds overweight. And the reason I tell you that is to tell you that I used running to fix, as well as my mindset, to fix that problem. And so I've ran, I don't know, probably 6, 7, or 8 marathons. I've ran one ultra marathon.
Wow.
And my mindset going into any one of those is that I will never quit, right? I'm not a big Goggins fan, but like that mindset about you're going into a particular situation, and it does not matter what your mind tells you that your body is capable of. I'm not going to stop that. I think that ultra marathon was 6 hours and 18 minutes because I was a big boy and a lot of running, but it's a knowing. That's what I refer to it. That like I'm not going to stop, and that was a really early seed of that was that military experience.
Yeah. So how do you do that when you're going to Saudi Arabia, Iraq border? You think about, you said your team that's with you, your team, the military, your country. It's a lot of weight, right? And so you talk to the man or woman listening to this that's walking to the boardroom right now, and they've got those fears because of this presentation they've got to give, or they get that client, or whatever it may be. Like, how do you actually get through that though, and still perform and still execute the mission, even if you're scared?
Right. So I would equate what we're talking about here. I mean, it's really similar. So I've given a lot of Toastmasters speeches or presentations in front of a board, things of that nature. And the number one, I don't know if it's the number one, it's probably in the top three tools that I use is something that I call I'm excited, right? Instead of labeling that
Yeah.
feeling that I'm having as fear or anxiety or any of the other thing, any of those other emotions that are detrimental, right? If you name it something different, like I'm excited, and then you go into that opportunity, and here's how I think of it, Brett, and it's the same as gratitude, for example. When you put your focus on something outside of you, so if you're going into that boardroom presentation or you're going into that meeting with the customer, you're thinking about the customer more than what you're thinking about you or how am I going to show up or how am I going to come off. If you can put the focus on the mission of the organization when you're giving the presentation or the value of what you're going to be able to help that client with, to me, that is the most, again, probably top three most powerful things ever used to over overcome those feelings, right? It's basically just rechanneling.
Well, it is. If you're focusing on others versus, you can't focus on yourself. That's where fear and anxiety, stress comes in, and then now you are, thinking yourself. You're not doing on your mission. That's most important. Our mission here is to help people achieve a future greater than the past. And going into this, think about, oh my gosh, I hope I don't mess up, or I hope I don't do this. Yes, that comes with experience and time. But man, I got to focus on the mission of helping that person I'm getting ready to sit down with.
Exactly.
Yep. Well, I know you're in creating a life of harmony, and when you hear me say that, what comes to mind? How do we create a life of harmony with the crazy world that we live in today? Notifications and TV and media and all this. How do we do it?
Be intentional. And so what I mean by that is, well, first of all, for any good conversation in harmony, I'll start with goofing a little bit on the term work-life balance. And I started with saying that was a myth, but where I've evolved to is just saying it's the wrong measurement. Like, are we supposed to believe that we're supposed to put like work in one of these, like think about an old apothecary scale. Are we supposed to put work in one bowl and anything else from our life in the other, and then somehow they're supposed to balance out? Like, that's not how life works. So what harmony for me is these intentional practices that I employ, Brett. And I have, for example, what I call my one-page plan for life. And I have everything that is my core values, my core competencies, my purpose, my goals for the year, my goals for the month. They all live on a document that I call my one-page plan. And basically, this is a direct lift from what I used in business to run a successful organization. But you know how life works. Just as soon as you have your great little one-page plan yourself and you start running off into life to let it happen, what's life going to start doing?
It's throwing you balls, right?
It's going to start throwing you curveballs. It's going to start throwing you left hooks, and maybe sometimes it throws you straight out gut punches, right? Think about a global pandemic. And so you have to have, I believe, you need to have an effective process in place that I call my day of Zen. And so I take a day off every month. And the first half of the day is a wholesale reflection of what happened in the previous month. I just shot a little video here about a week ago that said, when I did my day of Zen at the end of May. And I said, hey, are you the kind of person that says, wow, where did May go? Right? Like, I never, with a capital N, never say anything like that because I don't let months sneak up on me, right? And the entire second half of my day of Zen is planning out a plan to crush that next month. And so when I finished May, I had 32 things on a list that went well in May. And I had 6 things that I want to do different, which is code for better in June. And I built a plan to make that happen. And then the third part of my intentional process I call carpe diem, right? So obviously Latin for seize the day. But it's a very intentional process that I use to what I call, Brett, operationalize what's on my one-page plan and make that come to life. Today, right, is is June 14th of 2023, and we're only going to get one of these.
Yep.
What we do every day matters way more than people give it credit for. And I'm talking about how well we sleep, how well we eat, how well do we do our nutrition, are we grateful for what we have? I could go on and on.
Love that, man. It's so funny how in line we are. So I pulled out here my my one pager, my plan, and I call them connected goals for 2023. I want to be connected, right? I want to be connected with goals. For me, it's my F to the sixth power: my faith, my family, my fitness, my firm, my finances. Right? I list all those goals in the background. You can see them here when you're looking at it. There's pictures of my back here, right? There's our visionary logo, our future greater than your past logo. These are important to me, and every day I keep it in my journal. It's right here. I pull it out. I look at it, and I start to light the ones that we've done. Because I think that's important, right? And then it's funny because here's my podcasting journal. It says Carpe Diem. Isn't that funny? And that's what you just mentioned there. So I couldn't agree more. How do we do that? So what's that process look like for you? Let's get into detail more on this Zen day. Where do you go? How do you do it? What's it look like?
Yep. So the tagline for my day is Zen I call checking out so you can check in. So first of all, what are you checking out of? Basically, what you're checking out of is your day-to-day life. So I'm really good at training people in my life how to treat me. And that includes, spouse and children and business and coworkers and things of that nature. So everybody knows on the day of Zen, they're not going to get a hold of me, right? Unless it's an emergency, you don't get me. And so you have to break the cycle of what you do every day, day-to-day routine. So you don't do this at your home. You don't do this at your office. I am a big fan of the outside. I love going to places that are bigger than me, that are inspirational. I love driving up to the Grand Canyon or Sedona or just out in the desert to reconnect with something bigger and something slower than my day-to-day life.
Yep.
And again, I already mentioned and I have a ton of written goals. I would, for what I typically tell people that I'm trying to achieve, it seems like a lot. And none of my clients follow my program chapter and verse. I share what I do. I offer them the tools. I walk them through. Most of my clients do have a process of Zen in their life where they're taking either a whole day, a half a day, or at a minimum, they're taking, 3 or 4 hours at the end of any given month to review through their previous and then build that plan. The other thing, Brett, in addition to just reviewing and reflecting, I like to think of the day of Zen as a chunk of time where I can just focus on something specifically, because we all know how this works, right? When life is dealing us changes, and that's what life does. Like I said, just as soon as you have your great one-page plan, life's going to start throwing you, curveballs.
Yeah.
And so the day of Zen is a great time for me to just review and reflect on two things. One, if life is giving me a curveball that I need to reflect, say that's a child that's all of a sudden, struggling in school, or a parent that seems like they're going to need a different level of care going forward. In our day-to-day life, we don't really have, I call it the white space, right, to account time and think about these things. Or you can use the day of Zen, and I do this like throughout the month. I'll start adding things to my agenda for that day that I want to think about proactively, right? And so I've started this new, entrepreneurial business venture for myself, and I'm, busy in the effort of, doing podcasts and working with clients and building a marketing plan and all of these things that entrepreneurs do. But if I don't carve out time to intentionally think about specific elements of this. Of course, that could be any time during the month. But how about a time that you have carved out where nobody's going to get a hold of you? It's a perfect time to do that.
I love it. I absolutely love it. I do it quarterly, my strategic time and my little retreat for myself. And I'm with you. I go someplace inspiring. We don't have the mountains and everything you have in the Midwest and St. Louis. Maybe going to Forest Park, beautiful views in there. Maybe going to the Four Seasons lobby. Maybe going to the Riverton lobby. Maybe going on a nice golf course on their back deck and just dreaming and thinking. And it's me, my journal, and thinking. And if I could add one thing, and maybe you do this or not, but I love, at the end of each quarter, I look back at the last 90 days pictures. I'm a big pic guy. And I write out all the pictures that I've taken and what I'm thankful for. Amazing when you actually back and physically look at that picture in your phone on how that feels, and it takes yourself right back to that moment. And it allows me to think about the experiences, but also allows me then that next step is, what's the next 90 days going to be, and what experiences can we create family?
Right.
Just take some prep work.
And wholeheartedly agree, do the exact same thing. I call that taking stock, right? So I do it in two ways. I create a folder. I have a folder for each month of the year, and I collect. And I've been doing this since 2009, where I collect, sometimes it could be well, here it is June, right? So it'll be a Father's Day card from my kid that's 12 now, a Father's Day card from when he was 3 years old, right? Oh. And so I collect things like that are rewarding to me. And so much like those, it's a place to go back and reflect on the good things that have happened in life, and it encourages me to do even more.
Love it. That's solid. Solid advice right there. How important to you is reading? So I'm a big reader. In April of 16, as I was the king of hey, I get a book, somebody hands it to me, read 30 or 40 pages, and then it kind of just starts to collect dust, and then all of a sudden it's in a cabinet somewhere. And I said, you know what? Enough is enough. I'm going to start reading 10 pages a day. So 10 pages a day has resulted in about 22 to 25 books a year. There's people that read a whole lot more than that. I understand that, but for me, it's a big deal. And now I've created a Facebook page for those that like to read and want to share and be around like-minded people. It's called 10 Pages. Get out on Facebook, join the group. But how important, if at all, is reading to you, and what advice would you have around that?
Critical. And so I actually use, and I'll just call it personal development, is the key to that change that I needed to make. I actually refer to now the year 2008 as a year that I had an awakening, right? Because as I alluded to before, I had a handful of things that weren't going so well in my life. My career was an example of a good thing. My relationship with my kids was a good thing, but I was about to be divorced after, being married to somebody, the wrong person for 17 years, and about to be, bankrupt. And I'm not proud of any of these things, Brett, but I am proud that I was able to figure it out. I was able to start listening and better information from better people. And most of that came by way of books and audio tapes. And so I started my personal development journey in 2009, and I have never, again with a capital M, never stopped learning. And I constantly read. I think it's the key, good leadership, just like leading a good life, is just like the analogy of climbing the mountain. Because just as soon as you've gotten to the top of the mountain that you're going to, you're probably going to find another mountain, right?
Yep.
And the way up the mountains is through action followed by action, right?
Yep.
And that, if there was one caveat to all that we're talking about now, it's that you can't just read the 10 pages. How do you apply those the next day?
That's right.
That's another big thing oftentimes when I'm working with my clients, that's the biggest part of the equation is, again, I use that term when I was talking about my carpe diem. How do you operationalize what you want?
So what's the one book, if you had to recommend, if I read it and I said, this is terrible, you'd pay me $100 because it's so good?
Well, there's probably, I have a list of recommended reading that probably has 100 books on it, and it's broken down by category. I'll tell you the one book that I give away the most, and I buy a lot of books, 50 or 100 at a time, just to give away. But the
Wow.
one book, this is the book that I give to kids that are graduating from high school, kids that are graduating from college, and then I also give them, $100 gift card so they have something cool as well as this book. But I give Earl Nightingale's The Stranger's Secret. It's what I
Great book.
call it's what I call the most densely packed 32 minutes of personal development in history. And not that I've read everything that there is in history, I haven't, but I've read most. And it is the most densely packed 32 minutes.
Yeah.
And here's the way that I tell people to view The Stranger's Secret, Brett. Read it or listen to it, right? It's 32 minutes on YouTube. Every day, every week for a month, every month for a year.
Oof.
Only 32 minutes long. If that doesn't change your life, you're not doing it right.
I love it. That is a solid book, and I've got it in my office, and I need to read it because I haven't read it in years. And you're right, that is a game changer of a book. So let's take a turn here and talk about culture. Obviously, culture is important, whether it's in business, sports, the locker room. It's really important to have the great culture for a winning team. How do you help, and what advice would you have for creating just a top level next culture?
Yeah. Culture is the people game, right? And whenever I talk about people, I use two words. This is long game, and you got to play small. When I said before, like what you do on a day-to-day basis matters. It's super important, right? And so I'm into the small things. I'm into, first of all, when you're allowing people on team, whether that be a sports team or a corporation, like being very specific and having a high bar for who you allow on your team is table stakes. And I can't tell you how many CEOs or founders that I work with that don't even have job descriptions for the people they hire, much less a crystal clear vision of who they're about to put on their team. Next is onboarding. Right? If you do a very thoughtful onboarding, whether that's hanging the jersey in the locker with the teammate's name on the back of it to be inspectable, or how you line somebody up with a battle buddy or somebody to be with their first. I had an old boss that used to say, every time we put somebody in this organization, the first week that they're here is just like they're back in first grade, right? It is almost the same as that. So lining them up, making them feel welcome, but not just making them feel welcome, equip them with the tools that they're going to need to be successful in their job. And then once you have team members on your team, whether it be new or the existing, what is your frequent communication, and how, are you using KPIs? How often are you getting together with your team and communicating the message? Because with culture, just like setting the high bar with people, as a leader, you always, and I mean always, should be reinforcing the message of what the vision of the organization is, and what are our core values, and what do we want our customers to get out of this, and how do we want to feel about each other. And so playing the small game with people, having a feedback loop to constantly give them feedback on their own performance and how their own performance is weighing into the performance of the overall culture of the company. All of these things are critical if you're, and I was always on the journey for my holy grail, Brett, is operational excellence, right? So top quartile performance in every metric that could be measured in your group or subset, right?
Yeah.
And people is the name of the game. Like, you will win or lose with the people you decide.
Yeah. What's what Starbucks talks about? They're in the people business, not the coffee business, right? Create the experience. Right. Whether you like them or not, they've built a pretty good business. When you think about that everything you just, and I agree with. How about feedback? How important is it, even feedback up to the leader? And I say that because we've had a meeting for years now. We call it 324. We were founded on March 24th. That was the day we were founded, 2014, here at Visionary. And so we go to it. We meet my business partner Tim Hammett and I. You sit in front of the room. There's no agenda. There's no paper. There's no pre-message. It's been a game changer meeting for us. We go there and we just get the feedback. My philosophy on that is I don't want the water cooler talk to turn into a much bigger deal. So about every 8 we get together with locations, the ones that are close to here, we gather in person, others we on the phone and stuff. But how important is that to get feedback from your people? So small things, to your place small, that smaller things don't turn into bigger things.
Yeah, I love that process you just mentioned of getting together, almost like a town hall, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think, again, I'm going to go, you need to go small. You need to go small here. When I say small, I mean you as a leader. Like, how do you keep your ego in check, right? Because how you act every day, how you show up, how you interact with your employees, your team. Like, are you the CEO and you have the parking spot that's, the closest to the front door? Or do you give that to the person who works the hardest, each month, and you let them have that space and you walk from the outside, right? Simon Sinek wrote a book called Leaders Eat Last, right?
Yep.
Which is a book that he wrote after shadowing a general in the military, right? And so these are good core principles, right? If you're much of your own, or if you're using too much of your own product, right, and your ego gets too big, you're not going to be able to hear the message of the team.
I like that. Very solid. So do you do that from a standpoint of, how your kind of go to, you say crystal clear vision, you've got your one pager. How do you articulate that, and how often do you do that without feeling like you're saying the same thing over and over and over a team?
So I believe it's, you need to have a pattern of structured communication, right? And so the one-page plan for me is where that information lives. But then, as you mentioned, having like well, maybe you were mentioning your Zen quarter. We used to run a plan where we had a quarterly meeting with the entire organization, right? And so we would do a quarterly leadership retreat where we would assess our quarterly goals and then build out the next quarter's plan. And so we would use that quarterly meeting and we called it family business, right? And so we're not a family, we're a business. We want to treat each other as much like we can like family, but at the end of the day, it's a business. So we need to speak frankly, like a good family should. We don't stuff problems. We talk openly if there are problems, and then we celebrate successes, right? And we celebrate milestones. And that's great on a quarterly basis, because if you string those together, right, 4 quarters is like four quarter miles in a mile run. And now, how do you break it down beyond that? So we would have a monthly KPI meeting. So everybody would like call in virtually, and we would do a KPI meeting. We were touching on all the vital metrics from the organization. And this is the leadership team and senior leaders reporting out to the rest of the group, right? This was our job to report out on. Now, obviously, it was their individual performance that was making up, but it's the leadership team's job to supply the metrics on how the team is doing, including the individual feedback. And then you break it down from there. I'm also a big fan. I don't know, Brett, if you've done daily huddles, but I'm a big fan. I've been doing daily huddles with my operations team since 2009, and it is super powerful.
That out. We don't do daily huddles, but we certainly huddle and talk throughout the day. That's good. Last couple questions here. Habits and rituals. I ask you, or if I follow around with a camera every day, what are those no miss items I'm going to see that Jeff is doing day in and day out?
Yeah, so I'll turn to my Carpe Diem and my Franklin Planner here, which kind of dates that I'm a little bit of an old school guy. And so I'm going to get up every morning and I'm going to meditate. I'm going to turn my coffee pot on and I'm going to meditate for 18 minutes. And I
Yep,
bumped
yep.
that up from 2022 to 23 from 15 minutes to 18. I'm going to do 11 burpees every morning, whether I want to or whether I don't. It doesn't matter what I want to do. I'm going to live to 100. I'm going to live to at least 103 years old and doing burpees, which I think is one of the best exercises now it's not the easiest,
Right.
but it's one of the best overall
What?
exercises you can do for your body. So
Why 11?
Because heroes do more. Most people would do 10.
Okay. All right. I like.
Yeah.
I love it. Meditation, or you use a meditation app, or do you just sit in the quiet room and breathe?
Quiet room and breathe. I do 6 minutes where I do follow my breath. I do 6 minutes where I do a mantra. And then I do 6 minutes where I call sending love. So this is from Darren Hardy. So I pick 3 different people every day and I virtually send them love with my thoughts. And then I'm going to write in my gratitude journal. I'm going to fill out my carpe diem and I'm going to get the getting. And at the end of the day, I'm going to meditate again for 6 minutes. I'm going to make sure that I've done my physical activity. Like right now, I have a goal to make sure I get at least 6,000 steps every day. And so I take stock at the end of the day. I believe a lot in AM and PM bookend. They're your day that you have the most influence over.
Love it. Love it, man. Love that. That's what's the question. I'm always interested in what great people are doing, and I agree with all those things. Last question for you. So fears. A lot of people put fears in our minds. But how many fears or beliefs, these fears you've put in your mind, and how many of them blown up to the magnitude you've been in your mind to be?
Less than 3%.
Yeah. Tell me more.
Yeah, our brain is really good at protecting us. It's overly good at being able to protect us. It keeps us. It's reticular activating, right? So whatever we're telling ourselves, and if we don't tell ourselves something positive or where we're going, then we're going to listen to the thoughts that come up naturally. And our human mechanism is built to keep us safe, right? There's that little part of our brain that still is protecting us from a saber-tooth tiger, jumping out of the bushes to eat us when we were a caveman. Except we're not cavemen anymore, right? And so I actually have a tool that I use with my clients that I call percentages of time. And so the percentage of time that you should spend in the past, again, this is Jeff's idea, is 3%. And think about how much waking time you have in a day. And the time that you should spend in the future is 5%. You should spend that on your vision. You should spend that on planning, 5%. The rest of the 92% is what you're going to do today.
I like it. Very clear. Be where your feet are at. Right?
That's right.
Especially if you've already got clarity around where you're going. You've got your one-pager. You've built a plan. You show gratitude every morning. Man, spot on, Jeff.
And
Appreciate it.
When I get together with my clients, 9 times out of 10, it's not show me the great plan. It's show me how you're working.
Yeah, how you working the plan. How you executing. Jeff, this has been awesome, my friend. Where do we find more of you and where listeners and go connect with you at?
Absolutely. The best place to find me is on my website. It's my name, so I'll spell it out for you. It's JeffEschliman. So JeffEschliman.com. And on my website, you can take a quick assessment to find out how much harmony you have in your life. I've got a video that kind of breaks down these 3 main tools that I shared with you today, or people can hit me up to chat.
Awesome. And well, Jeff, thanks so much for being on the Circuit of Success. It's awesome having people like you in our world. Thank you for serving our country and what you did in Iraq. Greatly appreciate it, my friend. You can probably see my American flag right here.
Thank you so much.